committee and Mr. Keating worked pretty hard on outlining together this evening. So it's on our website as well, if anybody's interested in grabbing one. Thanks.
Rich, anything going on?
No, they haven't began yet. It should be starting.
The crowd? Huh?
It should be starting any moment.
Okay.
Meeting to order. I would like to call tonight's meeting to order. My name is David James U. Savage, and I'm the president of the United Wyoming Valley West School Board. Later this year, it's expected that the board will consider closing Skyler Avenue Elementary School. Before we can do that, the law requires that we conduct a public meeting. It is for that purpose that we meet here tonight. We'll give a brief description of why we're closing the school, and then we'll entertain any community input. At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order and ask that we have a roll call. Roll call, Joanne, please.
Mrs. Cassatt. Here. Mr. Damascus. Mr. Hardwick.
Present.
Mr. Camus.
Here.
Mr. Keating.
Here.
Mr. Majer.
Here.
Mr. Perfetto.
Here.
Mr. Pazinski. Mr. Usavich.
Here. The next item on the agenda is a moment of silence followed by a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to
I, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God.
Okay.
Thank you. So today we're here for the public hearing under the statute for the potential closure of Skyler Avenue. The hearing was advertised in both the Times Leader and Citizens Voice. Notice or the proof of publication will be given to the stenographer. For everyone in attendance, please note there is a stenographer here taking record of tonight's hearing. So when you come up to speak, please identify yourself clearly for the stenographer to hear you. And also, we'd ask that for cleanliness of the record that the stenographer is taking, that we all take turns speaking. He can't record multiple people speaking at the same time. So if you want your comments to be heard and recorded in the record, please make sure that we're not speaking over each other. And that goes for the board as well. So then at this time, we're going to turn this over to Mr. Tosh to give you a presentation.
Good evening. I'm Dave Tosh, and I'm the superintendent. Welcome to the Wyoming Valley West Middle School. I will frame this evening's presentation in the context of our district and community history with this opening statement. Thank you for your attendance here tonight at the middle school or via the Zoom link for our public hearing concerning the future of Skylar Ave Elementary School. We are here not only because this hearing is required by law, but most especially so that the reason for our recommendation regarding the school is clearly stated to our community and not only conveyed by sound bites and reporting that is limited by space in the newspaper. We have always known that the Wyoming Valley West community is actively engaged in our children's education and the resources that are available to our students. This is one of the district's great strengths. Educational research is undeniably clear that parental involvement is a critical component for children to be successful academically. So we thank you for being here tonight for a most important decision that will impact your child's education. As you might be aware, the administration has made a recommendation to the board of directors that it's time to close Skylar Ave Elementary School. This is not the first time that Wyoming Valley West has closed the building. Several years ago, you may recall the closing of the Main Street Elementary and Pringle Street Elementary buildings. But even before that, our district has continually reevaluated our buildings and closed or adapted them for other uses. When Wyoming Valley West was formed in the 1960s, there were 19 elementary buildings in the new district, all of them neighborhood schools and all of them aging. Over the past 50 years, most of those buildings have been closed. Some people may remember the schools on Rudder Ave, Pettibone, Turkey Street, Jackson Street, Washington Street, Vine Street, and other elementary buildings that were closed over the first 30 years of Wyoming Valley West. One new building, State Street, was built during that time and then expanded more than 10 years ago. Other buildings that were former high schools, like our Dana Street Elementary building, were refitted to be used as an elementary school. And the building you're in tonight was previously a high school. But even though this has happened in our district many times before, this decision to close and consolidate any school is always a difficult one and never to be taken lightly. It's a decision that is made only after considering a variety of factors and weighing the advantages versus the disadvantages. Although it may seem to some people that the decision regarding Skylar Ave Elementary School is a new one, I can assure you it is not a new one. The discussion has been happening both formally and informally since State Street Elementary project was completed in 2012. In fact, of all the buildings in the Wyoming Valley West School District, Skylar Ave Elementary has been the most discussed building over the past 10 years for the reasons that we are here tonight. Tough decisions such as this often create emotional outcomes. I ask tonight, we listen to the presentation, consider all of the information, and then at the conclusion of the presentation, any questions that are asked or comments that are made happen in a civil, a rational, and appropriate manner for which we can be proud of. Whether we agree or agree to disagree, tonight we have a terrific opportunity to show the students and the adults of this district and our community at large that civil, rational discourse and debate is healthy and reinforces the fabric upon which this country was founded. And what happens after tonight? As you know, our district, like every other district, operates on policies and decisions made by our Board of Education. But those policies and decisions are based on research and recommendation of school administrators and other professionals. As the superintendent of this district, I was asked by the Board of Education to make a recommendation on the future of Skylar Ave Elementary School. To make that recommendation, I have looked to the advice and opinions of current district administrators that meet daily for planning purposes. I have also reached out to several fellow superintendents from neighboring school districts who have gone through this process for their input into potential building closures. A large part of my recommendation is based on ongoing conversations and specific input I received from our Buildings and Grounds Director, Mr. Frank Rivera, who I consider one of the best Buildings and Grounds Directors in this area. His knowledge and insight into the physical structure of Skylar Ave has been a critical component in the decision-making process. I also want to thank Mr. Angelo DePrimo, who serves as the principal of both Skylar Avenue and Dana Elementary, for his input and his recommendations also. I am grateful to all who have assisted in helping me formulate a recommendation to the Board of Education. Finally, the district is currently dealing with challenging fiscal times. And I want to note that finances, where they are obviously important in running a district and making decisions, are not the #1 priority in the decision-making process for this recommendation. Our primary consideration is what is best for the health, safety, and the welfare of our children and for their education needs in a building that's 102 years old. The needs of our children outweigh any other consideration in this recommendation. And at this time, I would like to call on Mr. Rivera to come up here. Mr. Rivera and I have a very short PowerPoint that we would like to share. The two buildings that I referenced previously, you can see on the left, Pringle Street Elementary School closed in the year 2012, as did the Main Street Elementary in 2012. And please note that Pringle was also built in 1920, the same time that our current Skylar Ave was. But Mr. Dickon, can you go back one on that, please? I'm sorry. But the Pringle Elementary was closed after 92 years old as well. You can see Main Street was closed at the 84-year mark. Currently, as I indicated, Skylar Ave is 102 years old. One of the things that struck me when we first started meeting and talking about Skylar Ave was the constant need of repair and the amount of money that the district was dumping into it, as well as, again, health, safety, and welfare. The slide you can see is a back closet for one of the teachers, and unfortunately, anytime we get heavy rains, we're keeping our fingers crossed. And I'll now throw it to Mr. Rivera for some specific information on the roof and a couple other structures.
Thank you. First of all, we want to talk about the roof on the building. The building roof is 30 years old. It had a 10-year warranty at the time when the district put it on back in 1992. We're 20 years past the warranty on the roof. It's aged so much in the last 5 years, let alone the fact that it's 20 years out of warranty. The roof at the time was probably the best at the time at a 0.45 thickness of roof, where today the standard went to 0.60, and then the last two roofs that we put on the high school and middle school are 0.90, twice the thickness of what that roof was at the time. So it's just deteriorating at a point right now where it's leaking, it's no longer adhering because of the age of the roof, and it's in need of replacement. The caps on the roof, which cover the top of the parapets, because of the age of the building at 102 years old, are starting to crack from the movement of the brick, and just the main infrastructure of the building starting to deteriorate. The brick in itself has weathered over the years, being 102 years old. The mortar is deteriorating. When mortar starts to deteriorate, water starts to enter. When water starts to enter, then you have issues of mold in the future, water entering the building and causing expansion, contraction, and the building in itself just starting to fail. Boilers in the building were 1997. In the last 2 years, 2 years ago, we had several sections of the boiler that were, both boilers were 1997. We have 3 sections that failed in a leak. So we were operating on 1 boiler in the building for the last 2 years, taking parts from 1 single boiler to make 1 boiler work. And that's why we were able to keep heating the building over the last 2 years. The first floor classroom, 102 years ago, they didn't have cafeterias in buildings. That building 102 years ago probably didn't even have busing. People would walk to their buildings because they're all corner buildings. They turn a classroom into a cafeteria. There's no water, no running water. There's no heating facilities. Everything today would be microwaves and just standard warmers. So everything's brought into the building and served to the students out of a classroom, basically. No ventilation because the building is so old. I will tell you, compliment teachers, compliment bring the job, and obviously having gone through what we've gone through, pandemic, you can only imagine how this is children, but again, environment shift. Conversely, King Street is 3678 in terms of square footage, probably 22 to 25 acres. Yes. At this time, we have no exhaust ventilation in Skyler. As we move forward into, in the future, all areas like this will have air conditioning in cases of, say, like State Street, exhaust air on multiple times a day in order for you to bring oxygen back into the buildings. Skylar has no ventilation in the building to exhaust in these classrooms. It's a standard classroom. Dana, it does have, we do have a future on putting exhaust ventilation in the cafeteria shortly. There is no ADA accessibility in the building. Nothing to the entrance or steps as you walk in. No way for a handicapped person to get into the building. There's no elevator, no chair lifts of access, or no egress to any of the floors. Bathrooms are in the basement. They're not even compliant. Not ADA compliant. You'll have a mixing in your water. Younger students, you have a hot and you have a cold. And if the students just turn on the hot water without the cold water in these older buildings, if you don't keep the temperature down, they get scalded. Or sometimes we have the tendency to not even put hot water on in some of the older buildings because the students are small and we don't want them to get hurt. And we definitely keep the water temperatures down in the older buildings. The ceiling, and this goes from the 2015 feasibility study that was done in the district. The ceilings, the tiles are in decent shape, which are the acoustical tiles, the suspended ceiling tiles, but above the top of those tiles are flat. As you know, it's 102 year special building. You can't see as plaster, and it will start to break and start to fall. And you can't see it unless you inspect it, and we inspect it in the summertime. And pieces of the ceiling has fallen, and falls into a net that was put in years ago, so it doesn't fall on top of students or faculty. The windows in the building, I just want to mention, they were replaced at one time, but they're single pane, no air conditioning in the building. So you end up having the heat extract through the building. In the wintertime, you have the cold. So it's harder to keep the building heated. It costs more money. Fire alarm system in the building, we have a new operating panel, but all of the poles and the smoke detectors are old and need to be replaced in the building. The building is in a commercial area. There are fumes from trucks and cars in the playground area. We park next to a building because there's insufficient parking, so we park close to a building, and so you have cars that exhaust towards the building. The two interior offices were probably closets at one time. As time went on in these buildings, they just made room because they needed to put now secretaries in buildings, and now there's no heat in these buildings. There's no ventilation. There's little heaters that are put in these rooms to just keep them warm, but no ventilation. The interior carpeting in the building is in more than poor condition at this time, I would say. And as you walk through the hallways where you have 200 kids and faculty and thousands of feet walking from the outside in here on the carpet in the hallways, you can imagine how dirty that carpet gets in an elementary through the salt and through the snow and the rain. Below, and it has to be mentioned that it's carpeted, but below that carpet is tile. 102 years ago, they didn't put carpeting in. So there is no doubt that underneath that carpeting, you had 12 by 12 tiles. And through our AHIRA, I am sure that the tiles were covered over the top of asbestos tiles and mastic, as most older buildings are. So if you do tear those up and you're tearing the carpet out, you would end up tearing tile out, and you would be required to end up abating the asbestos that would be in the tiles at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. I'd like to make one final comment. For my colleagues over here on my left that work with me on a daily basis, they know since they started working with me, whether it was 25 years ago, 20 years ago, or 5 years ago, that the majority of meetings that I've run and the philosophy of my administration is always we and us. I don't micromanage, I'm not a dictator. I take into account the expertise of all the people around me that this district has hired. And very rarely will you hear me walk around using the word I. But I would ask you to indulge me and allow me to use it for 1 second. I came into this district in 1998. I'm very fortunate. I love this district. This district has been very good to me. But when I came in 1998, I came in as an assistant principal here at the middle school. In 2.5 years, I became the principal here at the middle school. And in around 2008, I became the principal of the high school. I stayed at the high school for 2 years, and I came over to the central office. I was the director of secondary education. I oversaw the high school and the middle school. When Mr. DeReamer moved into the position of superintendent, we consolidated his position, and I became the director of elementary and secondary. I then moved on to the position of assistant to the superintendent, and 2 years ago, very fortunate to become the superintendent. Why do I tell you this? Over the course of almost 25 years, I have made a ton of decisions. And a lot of those decisions, I can tell you that I don't sleep at night. I wrestle with those decisions. I go back and forth, and I constantly evaluate myself if I'm making the right decision. In retrospect, over the course of almost 25 years, there are some decisions in buildings that maybe looking back on it, I wish I would have done some things differently. Maybe an evaluation of a teacher, maybe a conversation with a parent. There's some things I regret. And some things I still struggle. But I can tell you with 110% certainty, I do not struggle with this decision. I sleep very well. And I say that to the parents in front of me. I say that to the teachers in front of me, with all due respect. I say that because it's the right thing to do at the right time. I don't think you could find a building in this area, a school, that's 102 years old. We've had some situations there this year that were bad situations. But on a whole, my recommendation is based on, and will always be based on, the health, the safety, and the welfare of children. I will never compromise that. So I just want to make sure that everyone is clear tonight that while these decisions are hard, and I understand that they can be emotional, and I understand a lot of people are affected, I just hope that you understand and respect when a decision is made, if it's made with your children's best interest, their health, safety, and welfare, that you'll consider that and respect it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tosh. My name is Paul Keating. I'm the chairman of the Finance and Personnel Committee. Want to commend Mr. Tosh for the report that he presented this evening to all of you, and basically start where he ended, because I think we all concur that the health, safety, and welfare of the students is the most important thing that this board as well can decide on, and what's in the best interest of the faculty as well, and the taxpayers. And I just want to make a brief comment. I did this last week when we met with the group of teachers. I see some of them here this evening. My primary focus since being on the board has clearly been the numbers of the district. And we're going to later on discuss at a special meeting the introduction of the 2022-2023 budget, which is $6.8 million less than what the budget was for this current school year. And there is no way, and that we can balance this budget without looking very hard at closing this school. It's the oldest school in the district. It needs the most work in the district. It's the most non-compliant, as we've heard this evening, in many different ways. But, there was a $5.5 million, and I know the business manager's on the phone, but I've interacted with them many times over the past couple of months that I've been on the board, to try to get a true handle and feel for what the overall condition is of the school's finances. And as I said, we didn't learn until mid-March that we were roughly $5.5 million shy of being able to balance a budget. And this is only the tip of the iceberg, because you have many other facilities in this district that are at or near the end of their useful lives, as well as facilities such as the stadium turf that need to be remediated. And without getting a true handle on the district's finances and trying to reestablish a positive fund balance, our district's in trouble. And I have nothing but empathy for everyone that's in this room that has some type of, connection to the Skylar Avenue School, whether it be students that are here this evening, parents, the faculty, nothing but the highest regard for all of you. But, Dave mentioned earlier that finances are only a part of this decision. I think they're a big part of the decision because we cannot balance our budget without doing the things we're going to discuss in our budget meeting and our special meeting later on. And there are several positions that weren't filled, and thankfully to the hard work of everyone up at this table and to the administration, it looks as though no jobs are going to be lost. This was all accomplished by making in-house transfers, making sure people kept their jobs. But to maintain the current payroll that we inherited coming into this year, the budget could not sustain what came with the 2021-2022 budget. So I just wanted to get that out there on the table, that there's no way, and in my opinion, that we can afford to keep that school open any longer. We're not talking about, $100,000, $500,000, or even $1 million. We're looking at $5.5 million that we needed to close the budget hole between real revenues and expenses. And that needs to be known by everyone. Thank you.
So at this time, anyone who would like to address the board, we ask that you stand up one at a time, come to the microphone, identify yourself, and then speak. For those of you who are participating by Zoom, we will offer you an opportunity as well. Bear with us while those who are here in person take the first opportunity. Would anyone like to come up and address the board?
Hello, Heather Sostin, resident of Kingston.
Ma'am, if you could just spell your last name for the stenographer.
Soska.
Thank you.
As a graduate of Wyoming Valley West, parent of two, and also an educator in a different district in this district, I just want to appeal to the heart of this board, because as a graduate of Wyoming Valley West, I attended Third Ave Elementary, the smallest, I think, school we have. I still can tell you every teacher I had. I can name about 95% of my classmates. And when we reconnect, either in person or on Facebook, we look back fondly at our memories of that school. The decision to close this school, I understand all of the financial and building structure issues, which I also am concerned that if it is in such dire condition, has my daughter been safe the last 160 some days of school in this building? Because the way it is painted, it's falling apart at the seams, and I'm a little concerned now that my daughter has been attending a school that is not safe for her. When you close that school, you're dispersing all of those students, and I have not heard one plan about what we're going to do with these children. We're just going to disperse them to the other elementary schools, which probably are getting rising numbers with new students coming in all the time. So my daughter's going from a class of 19 to what, 29? 30? I understand the sub shortage. So when teachers are absent and the classrooms are split and 5 students go to this room, 5 students go to that room. Now what are we looking at, 35 children? My daughter can't learn in that environment. I don't think a lot of children can. That's not in their best health, safety, wellness, education, in my opinion. So I want to know if there's any sort of plan what we're doing with the children. How are we going to keep the smaller class sizes, which are crucial, especially in elementary? They need that small class size. They need that connection with their teachers. And the more children that are in the classroom, the more behavior problems you'll notice. The teachers will be able to spend that individual one-on-one time as often as they would like to. And so I just really appeal to the heart of this board to figure out some sort of solution. Does it have to close now? Does it have to close this year? Is there nothing else we can do to keep these children in a building where they have that small connection to their teachers and to their classmates? I want my daughter to be able to grow up and go, oh, when I was in first grade and I had this teacher and we did this and it was so much fun, and then we went to second grade. I don't want her to get lost in the shuffle of all the other children in a giant building. And I think a lot of parents might feel the same way as that. I just ask that you consider that emotional aspect for children and just find if there's some way to keep it open another year or some sort of plan to make smaller class sizes, even if we can't continue with the neighborhood schools that a lot of us grew up in Wyoming Valley West with. Thank you. Heather.
Hi, my name is Savannah Adams. I live in Kingston. It is not good to close down the school because kids have difficulties making new friends or have difficulties learning new stuff because we didn't learn the same things that other schools did. Other people might live far from other schools too. More kids, teachers have to buy more supplies for people. Also, we're going to have more kids in class, and some kids won't think it's fair that the teachers would be at another kid when they need help too. Can you please tell me how closing my school will help my education?
If I can,
I'm sorry, her question ending was just, can you please tell her how closing her school is gonna help her education? If she could.
Miss Savannah, my name's Bill Hardwick, and if I can, I have some comments I'd like to make, but what I did want to do is hear each of the people from the public, including yourselves, comments. And I don't have a direct answer for you, but perhaps in some of my comments, it'll help to understand a little bit. So I'll say that for now. I know that's not an answer for you, but I'll try to address your question in some of my comments when everybody's done. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Mccracken. I live in Kingston. I have 3 kids. 1 is in Skyler and 2 are in Third Ave. I want to take the time to really thank you for letting us present these things to you and our ideas. I think it is really important because we are a community. Education is the #1 purpose here in all schools. From what I understand, you want to divide the kids into the different schools. And I think that that's going to really damage the whole purpose of education. These kids are going to get lost. There was a study done, and I have some copies that I can leave, but it was called Project STAR. It's also known as the Tennessee study. They used kindergarten through 3rd grade, randomly selected classrooms, and they put them into 3 different class size groups, 13 to 17, 22 to 25, and over 25 students. Students in the smaller classes who completed high school were more likely to take college entrance exams than students assigned to medium or large classes. The effects were even stronger for minority and less affluent students. Now, this study goes on long. That's just what I wanted to highlight from it. Which brings me to our school. I do have a copy of all of the students in all of the buildings and the numbers. They are all around 20 to 30 students per class. So that's where they are already. If we break up Skylar and say add 5 to 10 students into each of those classes, we're now up to 25 to 35. Adding in the lack of substitutes available to the district, usually when there isn't a substitute available, the classes get divided and put into other classrooms. So if we take one of those 25 to 35 student classrooms and break them up again to put them into another classroom, we're now at 40 to 50 kids in a class. There's no way elementary students can learn in that environment. So I know that most of you chose your seats because you care about the kids, care about the community. So I think that in good conscience, we can all agree that overcrowding is bad. There's going to be increases in IEPs because some kids are going to get left behind. And that's, of course, partially parental problems, like you stated earlier, that definitely affects student learning. But so does class size, I'd say equally as much, because the attention that the kids aren't getting at home, they can get in school and then they can achieve. So it is in your power and it is your responsibility to make sure these kids are successful. So I want to ask, what is a good plan for these students so that they're not lost? Is it possible to utilize learning pods or trailers to keep the class sizes small? I know that's an extra expense and that's a huge deal because the budget is a mess. Is it possible that a new school can be built? I know that was in the plans about, well, maybe not in the plans, but it was talked about 7 years ago. There's a Times Leader article that states that they wanted to tear down Dana to build a new elementary school, a bigger one. And please, anything you can add, anything you could tell us about student to teacher ratios and keeping that number down. I mean, I think that is the most important thing. If you have to close a school, you have to close a school. But I think that keeping that ratio correct is the best thing that you could do for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a few.
Good evening. My name is Jacob Whitehead. I am a current 10th grade student.
Mr. Whitehead, if you could just hold for a second. Just for the record, Ms. Mccracken, right? Handed over the copies of her studies to the school board. Thank you, Mr. Maybe you could repeat your name so that for the stenographer and start over. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Jacob Whitehead. Okay. I'm a current 10th grade student, and I'm also a Skyler Avenue alumni. When I started my journey in elementary school, I had some difficult times. I am diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum, and adjusting to regular education was difficult. I was a kindergartner reading on an 8th grade level, but was unable to stay in my seat. Thankfully, I went to a school that was also a small community to guide me. Those teachers behind me are the reason I have come as far as I have so. I am asking you what will happen to the kids like me. Will they have a school of people who know the name? Will they have that community of support that I did? Will they get the close support I did? I will be graduating in 2 years, in the year 2024, hopefully at Penn State University. I can truly say I would not have come as far without this school and those teachers. I beg of you to give all the special needs kids at Skylar Avenue the same opportunities I had. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dawn Helena, Holena. I have a daughter that graduated from Valley West. We currently have a granddaughter, Skylar Avenue, and one in Little People be coming up. I'm not asking, I'm gonna ask questions, but I'm really not looking for answers. I wish we were given this earlier, so we had to read ahead so we can understand it. So part of, I guess, what I'm thinking is the school is deteriorating, not just last year, the year before that. So why wasn't it closed before? Is it because now we have a deficit of $5.5 million and the school's 102 years old, where the other two schools were closed after 84 years and 92 years, if I can remember from the thing? Now, I guess I'm not looking for an answer, but it seems like now that there's a deficit, let's close the school. If there was not a deficit, would we close that school? I would hope so. I understand about parent-teacher ratio. I think it is the best, and it is a shame that these children that go there are going to be dispersed. My other comment is, reading this, like I said, maybe it's explained in the back pages. But to quote, the district is in this position because of bad decision-making, poor financial planning, and failure to comply with any recommendations cited by the Auditor General. Shame on whoever these people were. I've been at Tobyhanna Army Depot 37 years as a budget analyst, and I can tell you what, if an auditor makes a recommendation, you don't do it, you're held by law. You can lose your job. Not sure if that has been, I'm not sure why I thought this school board here was part of that decision-making process. I remember the last time I stood here was when they cut the water polo program. I was president of the swim and water polo team. I came up to fight for it and we got it back, but we also had to pay some additional funding when our kids used to swim with asbestos falling from sidewalls into the pool. Timing system didn't work, but it got handled. We handled it ourselves, parents and students. So, like I said, I'm not looking for answers, but a lot for us to think about. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Wattis. I'm from Kingston. I am the parent of 2 Skylar Avenue elementary students.
Could you just spell your last name for the stenographer?
Sure. WADAS. As a fellow educator, I understand the financial difficulties everyone here is facing. I know that closing a small school like this is going to meet many needs. I have a question and concern. What is Mr. Rivera and his staff going to do to maintain those other buildings? We see the condition that Skylar Ave is left in. But you're going to move our students to other schools that are just as old. What are we going to do to prevent these things from happening in the future? Is there a plan, a commitment in place to do schools like that? So my child does not have to move schools several times. And since it is more than likely my child will have to attend somewhere else next year, what is the timeline to notify us where my child will attend? Those are my questions.
So if I may, Ms. Wattis, we are working on a corrective action plan for the rest of these buildings. So we are working on a corrective action plan for the rest of these buildings. It's in the process now. The Building and Grounds Committee have discussed it numerous times, so it will be announced very soon.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
As far as everybody's concerned, a few people have asked, and I have to answer this because it's kind of getting a hair to craw on me, but we had a meeting last week with our teachers of Skyler. It was an executive meeting. The announcement should be about June 30th is when we're going to find out everything. And just so everybody knows, in this meeting this evening, there will not be a vote to close Skyler. The vote cannot happen for at least 90 days, which the vote will not take place till August 23rd.
So my child might not know where they're attending until after August 23rd.
That we're just following the rules,
Right.
ma'am.
Will there be an opportunity for them to see their new building and orientation that exists just like they did in kindergarten?
Absolutely. It's my commitment to you, absolutely, and all the parents.
Thank you.
There's going to be an orientation for all the students that are getting moved to different buildings.
Good evening. My name is Margaret Whitehead Miller. I am a parent of a child that formerly attended Skyler. I'm a parent of a child that will hopefully be attending Skyler in a few years, and I'm a member of this community. I stood before the board a few years ago when there were budget issues and they were talking about what was going to happen. And I guess I have the same question to you that I had to them. It seems as though, even though it's been stated that decisions have not been made, it seems as though there are already recommendations. There's already been showings of the school. So I'm asking you, what can we do? What can we say to keep this school open? We have a community of people, we have a school full of people, and our children, we all want this building to stay. We all want things to get improved. Yes, we understand that financially things are difficult, but some of the things that we also saw on the slide, like the cafeteria size, yes, Dana's cafeteria is much bigger, but Dana also has many more students. My son attended Skyler and did not have an issue with the cafeteria. I understand with COVID restrictions, that can be an issue. But some of the things that were being shown seem to be blown out of proportion as to how they are in everyday school environment. So what exactly is left for us to do or say to keep this school open?
I'll give you my best answer if I will. The past practices of this board has got us to where we are today. The ignoring of that Auditor General's report and just blatantly ignoring it. There's no excuse for it. We have a humongous deficit right now that we don't know how to, we are looking to backfill it through retirements and such. My opinion, there's no really other way out of this besides getting around closing Skyler.
Right, that's what I assumed. I assumed everybody pretty much here is under the understanding that we are in the hole due to previous board members, and now this is the only option. Sacrificing our children and their education is the only option. What can we do to not do that?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't have an answer for you. It's a huge budget gap.
Thank you.
Excuse me, ma'am, would you please stay there? I have a statement to make.
Sure.
They're telling you it's past practice from other board members. Well, there's a few of these board members sat in on them boards that they are blaming for this situation. And it's simply not true.
Okay.
It's been brought up about that school for the last 10 years. And all the years I was president, but we could never get anyone to go along with it. But we wanted to either fix it or close it or whatever for 10 years, but there was never a decision made. But these same people that are telling you this now were part of it for the last 2 years or better. Some of them longer than that. So don't go on and think that, you know, they're innocent and the past board did this. It all doesn't fall on the past board, believe me.
Right, but no, the question I had was, it was a question I had then. What can we do to keep this open?
Well,
You know, but like you just said, past board members have been wanting to close this school for years.
Right, but the
And you
condition,
guys want to close it now.
but the condition of the building for years has been the same, and it's been looked at by every board member at one time or another. As far as Mr. Rivera said about the mortar and the bricks and everything like it. I mean, you're talking about millions of dollars restoration. I mean, it would be cheaper to build a new building. I mean, I think we all decided that 5 years ago, but to come up with the money was another problem.
Right, right. I understand that. And I also, you know, I mean, I was a PTO member. And we were also looking to air condition then, and we were denied by the school board to put in air conditioners for the school. So, I mean, we have tried and repeatedly we've been denied.
Yeah, but it doesn't make sense if the bricks are falling down and so forth, the exterior of the building isn't safe. And if I'm correct, I think does that building still have wooden floors covered with carpeting? Which is a fire hazard in any part of the state. I mean, I would think if state inspectors come to look at that building, they would condemn it only because of the oiled wooden floors, which they had 100 years ago in schools. So it's really not a safe building.
I just wanted to be clear that basically, I feel like this is just, that this meeting is pointless. Because you both pretty much stated that you'll be voting to close Skylar. It's been recommended for you to close Skylar. It is just a formality.
I understand. I believe that was the recommendation of the superintendent and the
Right,
people
right,
that
but-
spoke there, but the board has made no decision.
It has made no decision, but you have stated that several members have been wanting to close this for a year. You have stated that there is pretty much, there's no other option
In my best
in
opinion.
your best opinion.
Right, in my opinion also, but it's been that way for the last 10 years.
Right, so, but, and now it's because,
Well, you have a different board, you have different ideas and so forth. So maybe that's the change.
that's the change, yep. Well, I'm just, so the answer to my question then is nothing. We can do or say nothing.
So if I may, I mean, we are working on our budget, but we have not found that
Okay,
loophole yet where we're finding enough money to keep it open.
okay,
And ma'am, the point of today is for you to voice your concerns to the board. So they hear your opinion, and when they're making their decision, they take into consideration the opinion you're giving them. You may say that there's nothing that you can do, but you're doing, you're voicing your opinion for them to consider that and to weigh that in their decision-making process.
okay, thank you.
Mrs. Miller, I'm going to weigh in. I said I'd do it at the end, but
Okay,
I have to strongly disagree respectfully, Mr. Majer. I believe if action was taken 10 years ago, 8 years ago, when that report came out, I believe this could have been avoided. It needed investment and it needed decision-making, not kicking it down the road. And if 2 or 3 board members sitting up here were part of the problem, where was the other majority? Evidently, it wasn't a priority. I'm sorry, but I can only hear so much and I have to make a comment. This was not necessary, in my opinion, if it was dealt with. The problem is we're at a point now where there are no other good, viable choices to close this budget deficit. And I assure you, several of us on this board have looked at every opportunity to try to do this. The investment that would have to go in Skylar now to correct, I'm going to say some of that might have been overstated, but to correct these problems, we can't, it can't be done. It just cannot be done moving forward. And to share a little bit of my perspective of how this is, because there's questions here that were asked today. I don't have the answers of how the kids would be divided up. I don't know. I need the administration to be looking at that. What I do know is there are things that we need to do today. If we don't do them today, 2 years from now, this group's going to be even bigger and the problems are going to be bigger. And we will have done just what they did in the past to kick it down the road. And it's not right to do. I'm sorry for any children, any educators, anybody involved here who has to be part of this correction. But if we don't do this correction, it's not going to be good for the future of this district as a whole.
Thank you.
With all due respect, Mr. Majer, that report was read to you when you were controlled the majority of this board.
Pardon me, I can't hear you.
That report was read to you when you controlled the majority of this board for the last 12 years, and you failed to do anything. You
Well, that's
failed
your,
as a board.
that's
president to
your,
prepare-
that's your,
I'm
that's
speaking,
your
sir.
opinion.
Hold on one second. Guys, we can't talk over each other. Mr. Majer, I understand that you want to rebut. If you could just wait till Mr. Kamis finishes so that the stenographer can hear. Thank you.
You failed to have our business office prepare a proper budget for you. You failed to acknowledge any pieces of those reports and kept your hiring practices going when the population was on a decline. I'm sorry, but this solely lies on your shoulders.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but you had voted for one of those budgets. The only budget you didn't vote for was last year. Yeah.
I'll pull the minutes.
And-
and I'll give it to you.
And the other is you were part of it. You never said anything about it. Mr. Savage was part of it. He never said anything about it. I mentioned it and brought it up many times. We had committee meetings. We talked about it and no one made any decisions. And it was just like the good old days. We wanted to keep the Kingston schools open. And it's been every school in the district. Elementary has been closed down, testified by Mr. Tosh tonight. And the only ones left were the ones here. And that's only because of the makeup of the board for all these years.
If anybody would like, we can go back on voting practices. It's all on record, how I voted at this table.
It's very unfortunate that we're put in this position and we're just trying to do our best.
My name is Shirley Giza, Giza, and my position here is probably not going to be popular. I will be honest. But I taught in the district for 30 years, and I fully understand the parents. I understand the teachers. But I look at this from purely a financial aspect at this point in time. Knock on wood, my husband and I are fortunate enough that if our taxes go up, it doesn't really affect our standard of living too much. But as I've been going to the supermarket since we were able to return with the COVID, I watch people at the butcher department in the back of Garrity's shaking their head at the prices of the things that are there. I bought 1.5 pounds of ground beef, and yes, it was Angus, but it cost me $10.98. And I look at some of the other people that are there, and obviously, if they're at Garrity's in Luzerne, they probably do reside within one of our 9 towns. And I hear their comments. They can't afford this stuff. I see people go over to where the bread is. There was one man there, he couldn't believe the price of bread. Now, I'm not a philanthropist, but Garrity's had 2-for-1 bread. I don't need 2. There are 2 people. I did say to him, if we get in the checkout line at the same time, tell me which bread you want. You can have my other one. The point I'm trying to make is I don't know how many people in the valley are going to have to be punished if there were previous board mistakes. I certainly don't know. I don't want to get into that. For 25 years, I came to board meetings and then I just finally said, I can't do this anymore. But mine is right now from the financial aspect of things. Even if Mr. X was responsible for the problem, it is time that the problem has to stop. The money's just not going to be there for a lot of people in the valley. And, you know, maybe it's hard for a lot of us to see it, but I do know people who are really struggling now to make ends meet. I mean, they're working in call centers, places like that. They have honest jobs. They work hard. But I can understand a lot of their frustration, along with the frustrations of the parents and the teachers. I was very glad to hear that no one lost a job. I did hear that correctly, right? That everybody was able to be placed. To me, that's almost the number one priority, because if you lose your job, you can be part of the problem. You can't afford the things that are out there. But I really do think that, you know, going to a new school really doesn't hurt a child. I grew up in Plymouth, and in 1955, I went to kindergarten at Central School on Shawnee Avenue in Plymouth. In 1956, I went to first grade right across the street from my house. I went there for 2 years. And then the Plymouth School Board decided there were not enough kids in Willow Street School. We close it down, and those kids all go back up to Central. You know, it was more traumatic for my parents than it was for me. You know, kids are basically, I think, adaptable. I've watched them over the last 30 years, including my own. And once again, I'm not anti-teacher. I'm certainly not anti-education. I want the best for all of our kids. But I think this financial, what do we want to call it? Snowball or whatever. Somebody's got to go up the hill and stop it, because I really, just from observing people, I'm retired now. I retired 7 years. So I had a lot of time to go out and about. And when I see people, they really have it tough. It's not an easy decision. It's emotional. And again, my unpopular hope is that you do close down Skyler. But thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Heather Stokes. I reside in Kingston. My first question, actually, no, I want to go back to what Tosh had done for his little PowerPoint. And I kind of want to address, I went to Skyler in 2000 when Mr. Boyle was my 5th grade teacher and Miss Marson was right across the hall from us. The cafeteria has been like that since I have been there. We've never had any issues. Skylar's just looked like that for years that I can remember. And the plaster above the ceiling in 2015, why did we not fix it then?
It's a great question.
Do we know why? We didn't fix it then? Also, the roof, if it was under warranty from 92 to 2002, why was it not looked at in between those years to see if we needed repairs or anything? And as far as that picture of the closet where the roof is kind of caved in, we just recently had a tornado warning while the kids were in school, correct?
Yes.
Our kids were not released. Were our kids put anywhere safe in case something should happen? Or were parents notified? No, they weren't. So why now? Why is it such a concern now? When this has been happening for how many years? Since at least I was there 2000, 22 years ago. My second, I'll go to, on Thursday, May 12th, we had interested individuals walking around Skyler at school ground looking into doors, into the windows, inspecting the property, right? Anybody know that?
No, absolutely not.
Well, it's been confirmed that these individuals were then inside the school that day after school hours. And that our school is valued at 275,000 maybe? That property over there? So we're already looking, it's pretty definite that we're selling the school before having this actual hearing and before your vote on August 23rd?
That's just an appraisal. That's part of, if the school is to close, that will be factored in at some other point, that source of revenue.
Okay, so now my next question, what financial benefit are we getting from closing Skylar? If that is the value of the child.
Again, I'm just looking at, I'm on the board since December. So I want to make myself very clear. I've never sat in on one discussion prior to coming on the board about Skylar Avenue, the condition of Skylar Avenue, whether or not we're going to close Skylar Avenue or if it's the right thing to do. Since I've been involved, I've kind of made it my mission to try to determine what the overall, again, condition of the district's finances are. The building, when let me backtrack 1 second. When we found out back in March through research and verification from the business manager that the hole between revenues and expenses was roughly $5.5 million. The administration was tasked with how do we best close this hole? What are the options for the district? And unfortunately, that being 102 years old, and so no one actually did get laid off, we were fortunate that so many people were retiring, where others can be displaced now throughout the district to help to reduce cost. I've listened to several things tonight and at other meetings. If we were talking, you brought up $275,000 for the building. Where does that get you on $5.5 million? And I can't, again, I want to make myself clear. I can't answer for how the district got to $5.5 million. I think there are some significant clues and evidence, such as outlined in the reports and directly out of the Auditor General's report. But if something's not done right now, and as Mr. Hardwick mentioned earlier on, you just continue kicking this can down the road, the district's in real trouble. And someone else stood up here tonight, and there are people that live paycheck to paycheck, and just raising taxes for the sake of raising taxes, that's wrong also. And I want to make sure, I'm a parent. I have 2 children in this district, ages 12 and 13. So I care very much about the kids. Number one priority. I care very much about the teachers here tonight that are just innocent and caught up in this financial mess. But it took me and a team of other people, a few months to realize that the district's $5.5 million, in the red. How the district got there, I can't answer your questions on that. But as the finance chairman and as a new member of this board, I'm going to work really hard to make sure that these problems are resolved, and that as long as I'm around, we don't go in this direction again.
Wanted to make sure that maybe somebody could answer, because really the only thing I heard that we would benefit from closing Skylar is potentially, I know this was just an example you had used, and it's kind of apples to oranges, however, a new turf for the football field. And That's not our, that, we should, that's unfortunate.
Understood, but these are all things and unfortunately our business manager is not here tonight, but we have other buildings that have issues. There are millions of dollars of HVAC issues throughout all of these buildings right now. You have a district with an $80 million budget that has less than $2 million in its capital fund, and over the past several years, those dollars were used not for capital improvements, but to balance budgets. And why that was done, I don't know. I wasn't here, but I want to try to right the ship along with some other people that are here now. And it's not just closing the building. It's the reduction in staffing through attrition, not through people losing their jobs, but through attrition. And then how do you do an equitable distribution of the staffing as well as, I think it's so important also, as we heard here tonight, making sure classroom sizes are balanced. And that's going to be the job of the administration. But there's a much bigger picture financially that comes along with closing the building and relocating people by not replacing teachers that are retiring. I wish I could tell you something different, but it needs to be done.
My next one. Since we have no plan as far as where our children are going and a plan for not overcrowding these classrooms, will all three of my students who attend Skyler Avenue to this day be able to transfer outside of the district when and if on August 23rd, the board decides to vote to close?
Where are you talking about them transferring?
Can my kids, can I enroll my children in another school district?
Well, that's based on residence,
Okay, so Article 13,
or I should say, if you go to parochial school.
Article 13, 24 PS 7-780. Public hearing prior to closing school. Underneath that is closing school. Upon such school or schools being closed, the pupils who belong to the same shall be assigned to other schools or upon cause shown, be permitted to attend schools in other districts.
I'm not familiar with that. I would have to.
I also have another one. Where, let me pull it up. Pennsylvania Statute Title 24, PS Education 5-501. The Board of School Directors in every school district shall establish, equip, furnish, and maintain a sufficient number of elementary public schools in compliance with the provisions of this act to educate every person residing in such district between the ages of 6 and 21 years who may attend. B, a board of school directors may satisfy the requirements set forth in subsection A by any of the following. Number 4 is paying tuition for students residing in the school district to attend school in another school district. So if my children can attend another school district on Wyoming Valley West's dime, upon cause shown, that's another expense, correct?
I don't believe you're reading that statute correctly. There's more to it than
Right,
what
but
you're saying.
the first one, maybe this is the second one, however, it does state that it would be on your dime for certain things. However, the first one, when you close the school, upon cause shown, my child can attend another school district.
We'll have to look at it, but you know, if that occurs, if the school is closed, then there's a process. You can request it. I don't believe what you're requesting though is accurate to the law. We'd have to look at that.
Okay, will someone look into that? Who do I talk to about looking into that, to make sure? Because there should be, you have no plan for these children. And I can't sit around and wait until August 23rd, get a Skyward or Skyler a week before school to tell me where my child is.
And let me just respectfully say that it's incorrect to say we don't have a plan. We're in the process right now of having the public meeting that we're required to have. We meet administratively every morning for about 2 hours from 8:30 to 10:30. We've started to formulate a plan. We're tweaking it based on some boundary lines we're looking at. Our sole purpose, as Mr. Keating had said and a number of the other speakers tonight, as we told the teachers when we met with them, equitable distribution. And the main thing we want to try to do is get the class sizes where they're conducive to education. Now, obviously, and I'm being very upfront as I was with the teachers, when you consolidate a building, your numbers are going to go up. But we've done enough work over the last month or so as we've dealt with this to look into it to see if we can get an equitable distribution. As we move forward here, you're going to be informed. We will have the information on the website. We'll go through a robo, we'll mail if we have to, but I just hope you respect from, and I get your point of view, I really do, and I respect that. But we're not at Memorial Day yet. We're trying to juggle closing a school year with now preparing for a school year. And I think as time goes on, as we get more time with this, you're going to have a plan, but please don't say that we don't have a plan. We're working very hard on it. And I think it's a situation that as time goes on, if parents are patient, you'll see that the plan is thorough.
I do, okay. However, I do think asking for more time is why we are in this predicament that we are in. Keep asking for more time. However, I will look forward to finding out if my child is transferred out of the school district and where my children are going to go if we do not transfer.
Excuse me. I think that's a miss. Excuse me. What was your name? I didn't get your name.
Hello, my name is Melissa Adams and I reside in Kingston. First and foremost, I want to thank you two gentlemen here in the corner. I'm terrible with names, but just hearing people stick up for education and the lack of what has been happening for years is refreshing, because usually you hear people silent, they don't say anything, and that's exactly why we're here today. So thank you so much for actually speaking up. It's very appreciated.
Welcome.
I came to the last meeting and I still do stand with, I'm not here to attack, I am here to support. We all hope that we're supporting, not necessarily Skylar Ave as a building, but Skylar Ave as a culture. So I don't think anyone here is necessarily advocating to be in a building that our children are not safe. I think what we're advocating for is for our children just to have a plan to keep these smaller class sizes where their education comes first. It's scary to hear what you guys are saying and send my daughter to school tomorrow, not gonna lie. And that I've sent my children to school there for the past 7 years. So, I mean, that's very, very concerning. It's also concerning that my 10-year-old daughter was courageous enough to stand up here in front of a board of people, whereas most adults don't have that courage. And there's been no word on how it's bettering her education. I hear how it's bettering us financially. I hear how it's bettering us as far as the building's safety, but I have heard nothing on how it's bettering her education, and that's concerning. I don't feel proud to be in this district anymore, and that's also concerning. And that goes for all levels. I mean, I'm just at a point where I'm actively looking to move based upon my children's education. That's terrible. That's not what Wyoming Valley West School District used to be. So it's awful. I know you said you're going to outweigh advantages and disadvantages. Once again, I just haven't heard a single advantage as far as an education standpoint. All those physical, I don't even know what word to use, but the way our school is right now isn't new. all of those things you're saying have been that way for years, as you guys stated. But once again, we're here to support as far as Skylar Ave parents go. So if there's something that we can do to maintain our children's small class sizes, we're here for it. If it's pods, like one of the other parents mentioned, and we can somehow financially rally together to make that happen, I'll do best in my power to make that happen and support you guys in that. I am going to close with what I'm saying with a letter that I have received. I did not write it. However, I think that it is really, really important. So I'm just going to read it, exactly how it is. So this question is directed towards Mr. Keating. I understand that you are also the municipal administrator for the city of Kingston. Do you plan on abstaining from the vote to close Skylar Ave as the potential sale of the building would profit the city of Kingston in terms of taxes? Do you believe it would be ethical and in a good moral character for you to cross that fine line between both positions, as many believe this is a conflict of interest? There has also been multiple sources that had said that you have outwardly expressed what your vote will be prior to even having this hearing today.
I don't feel that I have any direct conflict in voting on a school closure. $275,000 sale would benefit the community by a couple $1,000s on property transfer tax. There's no significant windfall or financial gain for the community in doing so. I've been very vocal about this because this budget hole is something that I feel was handed off to me as a new board member. And again, after looking at so many different options that are on the table, we're not, if the building was substantially newer than what it is, if the district's finances were much different than what they are today, I think it's a different story. But when you're talking, again, $5.5 million, 102 years old, trying our very best to make sure that no one loses a job, that there's equitable distribution with the kids. I am a parent as well, so I have a very vested interest in the district.
Do your children attend the Wyoming Valley West School District?
They do. They both attend this middle school here. Yes, 7th and 8th grade. I don't feel I'm conflicted at all. I can assure you, I would sit down and show you the numbers, that there's no gain in this for the municipality of Kingston at all. My decision is being driven solely by the finances that were handed over to a new board here. And again, I'd rather be honest about what I'm thinking and tell you the truth about the numbers. I'm not going to sit here and say that, make up excuses, I should say, for what I think. I mean, I was a major author of the report that's been passed out this evening. I feel very strongly about the data that's contained in that report. And unfortunately, again, age of the building, making sure people don't lose jobs, and closing an enormous budget hole. Not something, like I said, that we have flexibility in looking at several other things. This is a huge problem. And I'm sorry, but I would much rather be honest with you on how I feel than not.
And I think everyone appreciates honesty. I mean, we're probably here we are because the board was so dishonest for so long, which is unfortunate. It just circles back to what I think everyone else is saying, and the closure has nothing to do with education. And that's what we should all be advocating for. So once again, I personally offer support on behalf of Skylar Ave teachers and parents. And I hope that while you're making decisions, and I know financial is a huge point of everything in life, that you do take into account their education and how they can still get the best education in this district. Thanks.
Listen, can I add something over here? Yo, Okay, I appreciate Mr. Keating and his honesty, but I can honestly say that we wouldn't even be having this discussion tonight if this new board didn't inherit almost $3 million in cuts. They were fortunate to have 10 or 11 teachers retire, plus support staff and so forth retire. And that's figured into this budget. That's why they can come up. And Skylar is just a couple 100,000 into the whole mix of things, if you look at it. But the honest to God thing was that 10 or 11 teachers were retiring, and the retirements brought it up to around $3 million, which cuts into that deficit very much. Other than that, I don't know if we had to lay off 10 or 11 teachers, we'd even be talking about closing the school.
Mr. Majer, I mentioned that earlier, that we are fortunate that it's played into the mix here where people are retired.
I grant you that, Paul,
But-
but I didn't know if they understood that. I'm sorry, but we wouldn't have this discussion, I'm sure.
Thank you.
If there's-
Good evening, Wyoming Valley West board members, administrators. My name is James Baldwin. I'm from West Wyoming, Bananas House School District. One of the big things that parents are concerned about this evening, obviously they have concerns about Skylar Avenue. They have children in the school. But one of the big things that I hear is parents are concerned about class size. So what is the district's plan to try to maintain reasonable class sizes moving forward if Skylar Avenue is to close?
James, we're looking at right now, our transportation director has been working very hard over the last 2 weeks, looking at some boundary lines, maybe tweaking them a little, again, to get an equitable distribution of the students. So again, it's something that we've been working on. It's the highest priority for us as far as moving forward. We understand the value of low class sizes. However, again, one of the things, and I say this respectfully, I don't want to compromise safety for class size, but we will get the class sizes to the point where we get them as low as we possibly can in terms of making it equitable. But realistically, again, when you consolidate a building, you know you're going to get more students. But I think the administrators that have been working on that aspect have done a very good job of it to try and minimize and get those numbers lower. We do have obviously some class sizes over at State Street that are a bit high. And again, unfortunately, we will try and get them to the point where it's as equitable as possible. But we're working very hard on that. And we have been for about the last month and a half.
I don't know if somebody can speak to this, but at this point in time, does the board and the district have like a set number that you try to keep the classrooms to at this point, or is it the best you can do?
The lower we can get them, the better. And again, I don't want to put a number on it, James, Mr. Baldwin. I want to put a number on it because I certainly don't want to say 27, 25, 22, 19, because I just don't know right now. But rest assured, that's the highest priority that we have right now, equitable distribution.
Right. One of the, I'm trying to speak on behalf of parents at Skylar Avenue here, but one of the things is, I know there's a lot of talk about the financial piece and that this is necessary, and I understand it's a very difficult decision for everybody to make. And I know there was some discussion about teachers going to be retiring. There's going to be some openings, which is going to help facilitate the necessity for this to actually work out financially. But my question is, how much by closing this school are you estimating to save even in the first year if the school were to close? I'm assuming you've worked out some numbers, just estimating. Have you worked that out?
Again, as I mentioned earlier, and the closure of the school is part of the overall picture. The budget that has been presented to the board for introduction by the administration and the business manager is $6,806,000 less than last year's budget. Last year's budget was $89,395,855. The proposed budget as presented by the business manager is $82,589,280. That's a significant savings. And I mean, just looking at the proposed budget, the instructional side of the budget, which contains a lot of the is $3,054,000. That section of the budget reduced from last year to this year. And again, we're trying to get a true handle on revenues and expenses. In the past, there was capital money used to plug the budget. There were one-time sources of federal money as well that was used in here. There were things, I don't even know what the heck they were, other financing sources that I've still not been able to figure out what that is. But regardless of all that, we're trying to get a true apples to apples picture of what the revenues are for the district, what the expenses are. And this is going to be an evolving process because, you know, once this budget is passed, I mean, we may find out that we don't have, and we keep using the word equitable distribution. We may need more teachers, you know, to keep classroom sizes in a range that's acceptable. But we have to start somewhere, and to let this ball just continue to gain steam, rolling down the hill, getting bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of deficit. It's the wrong thing to do. And ultimately, you know, we're here tonight, education number one, kids. If we don't make these decisions, who gets hurt the most by that? The kids. They suffer. I'm sorry, but this is essential.
I appreciate that, Mr. Keating. And like I said, I understand this is a tough decision for the district, and obviously you have to make tough decisions in these positions. I did have another question here. I guess, I know you said you've been looking at the different schools and trying to figure out how you can equitably transition students to other schools if that were to happen. Are the schools, do they have open classrooms that if you needed to add an extra classroom for students, are the schools that you're looking at already kind of booked? So it's just looking like you're probably just gonna have to add them to the current
We're gonna be able to do some things with classroom based on computer rooms that we may end up converting to get us extra room. But that's part of the plan that we're working on right now. But I do think we'll have some extra area that we don't have right now.
Like I said, I think that's a big concern amongst parents is they want to feel that, you know, their kids are gonna still have the small class sizes that they're used to or accustomed to in their current school. Because obviously education is what this is all about. And, you know, I think I'm sure based on what you're saying, you're gonna try to do everything you can to try to maintain that. But just something that came to mind while, you know, I was listening to everybody speak. You know, if additional space were needed, I know in some districts, you know, other areas, they use annex buildings. You know, if that were something that may be necessary. I mean, like you said, you're not really sure how things are gonna fall here. And you know, when you're trying to move all these kids to different districts, different schools within the district, but that may be something to consider as well if you're looking at space. I'm not sure obviously the cost, you're looking at saving money, but you know, something like that might be something to consider. But those are my thoughts, and I appreciate everything that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, sorry, I'm up here again. I just came up with a question. My name is Margaret Whitehead Miller. You guys talk about keep pushing things down the line, and Skylar's been pushed down the line for repairs. If we condense Skylar into the other classrooms, isn't the growing population going to be pushing that down the line? If we're growing these classrooms, if we're gonna be pushing them to capacity, what about the year after or the year after that? How big are these classrooms going to get? If State Street's already pushing limits and that was due to condensed schools, will this continually be a problem?
Again, as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be an evolving process. One of the things that was highlighted in the Auditor General's report, that led to where we are today is that as student enrollment was decreasing, the amount of staffing teachers was increasing. That was a problem. So what the overall magic number is in terms of teachers to students to create the right ratios, we first need to again stop the bleeding, and then as we see what this plan does, whether it's a success or not, then evaluate whether or not there's more faculty needed to balance out classroom sizes. This seems to be the best that we can do right now, given the circumstances.
Right, but you're already speaking about closing computer rooms to accommodate this, to squeeze kids in. So 5 years from now, what will that mean? If we close this school
again-
that has lower classroom sizes and we already take away those computers, how is this going to affect us in the future?
I can't answer for 5 years down the road from now. What I can tell you as a new coming member of this school board and someone who cares very much about the kids in the district as a whole, that's something that I will keep an eye on and work with the
Right, but if
administration.
we already get rid of this school, then that automatically gets all that space gone. So that means that 5 years from now, this space will be gone and we'll have to build a new school.
Again, you're looking at right now.
Well,
the-
I actually feel the opposite. I feel like you guys are looking at right now. You're looking at the deficit right now. And yes, the school needs repair, but
Because
right now it'll save us $3 million this year. How much would it cost to build another school? More than $3 million?
it will cost a lot. I know last year.
Right, so
but-
then we could possibly in the future need a bigger school because you're closing this one to save 3 million this year. Am I correct? No,
I don't feel that.
you don't feel that way.
No.
So if the classroom sizes are going up to, like, even if they're not going up to the state maximum, but let's say they're going up to like 25 to 30 kids when you close Skylar, what's gonna happen?
And again, if the classroom sizes need to go up to 25 right now, that may be a temporary sacrifice that we need to make to establish a fund
But how do
balance.
you know it's temporary?
Because again, we need to reestablish a positive fund balance. We have to.
Okay, so
It-
again,
it
it
did-
is,
Right, if we don't do anything, the district was deficit spending by almost $700,000 a year. And at some points, $1.1 million as outlined in the report. You cannot continue spending that way. We have to stop at some point. And you're looking at a building that's 102 years old. And all of the other buildings are old as well,
Right.
that need attention, that need help. The only technically new facility is State Street. High school was built in the 70s. All of these other schools are well over 50 years old. And the amount of capital improvements needed to keep these buildings sustainable is staggering.
right, I understand that. You stated that several times. But again, in the future, going forward, not just sweeping this for down the line, what are we gonna do when the district grows and you've already maxed out the classrooms from closing Skylar?
There very well may need to be a serious look at building a school.
And
But-
will that
but-
cost more?
It-
And will, okay, but how much does that cost to build a new school?
Hold on,
We-
one second, Paul. Ma'am, you keep cutting him off and vice versa.
I'm sorry,
I understand that you have questions, but it's hard to keep the record straight. So I would simply ask that you please pause and not cut off Mr. Keating or other board members while they're speaking, and they will try not to do the same to you.
Sure.
Best way I could put it. Heading into this school year, we knew, we just found out in March that we had the $5.5 million gap that we needed to close. I was not involved, but just reports that I saw that were floating around the district last year about the possibility of building a school. You were looking at low numbers, $30 million to $40 million, with roughly 15 million total dollars available through the federal funding sources to offset the cost. So you're looking at somewhere between 20 and $25 million net to build a school. The budgets with maximum index tax increases weren't balancing. How much do you recommend sticking it out there to the people in terms of tax dollars? I mean, before we take a hard look and at least find out what our baseline finances are. And I'm not saying you may be wrong, that we may have to look at building a school at some point and possibly within the time parameters that are set on that federal money. But to me, it would be reckless to move forward with such a plan and to go and borrow $25 million without first knowing what the hell our true revenues and expenses are and how we balance our budget. I mean, we have to start somewhere. This is going to be in cycles and steps and.
Right, and I'm not asking you to build a new school. That is not what I'm saying. I'm asking, like you just said, we could exceed the limits of the schools we have, correct?
It's possible. Everything that's been given to us at this time, and that's a hypothetical down the road. At this point in time, it appears that with what the administration has investigated and brought to our attention, it appears that, again, we have to sacrifice temporarily with increased class sizes, but we're capable of handling the distribution of those students and teachers into other facilities. Maybe not in the most optimal format where we have the very best ratio of teachers to kids. But again, until we determine what our real budget is, we have to start somewhere.
Right, I understand that, but temporary. We're temporarily, but we don't have anything past temporary. So wait, but you said we are temporarily possibly exceeding this. We're temporarily having a larger student to teacher ratio. Those were your words, correct?
Because it's possible that even with the facilities that we have at some point in time, we could increase staffing to level out the number of students in classrooms. I'm not saying that we don't have enough room right now, building wise. I'm just saying that if we didn't have to not replace as many positions, we may be in a better spot even with doing this as stated. But what the future holds, I can't answer that right now. I'm just telling you that I feel very, very strongly that we need to do this and we need to start now, or as somebody else said before, there's going to be way more people here at some point in time when the problems are possibly not even manageable at that point, saying, why didn't you do something about it when the writing was on the wall?
Okay.
Those are variables as well, like student size are our variables that they're working on, that we're trying to get a handle with and trying to do the best for the students and the teachers. We have faith in our teachers too, so we hope to have faith in the students and everybody.
Right. I mean, listen, I have every faith in our teachers. That is not it. I am concerned because many studies have shown that we've all agreed upon that the lower the classroom size, the better education for our children, correct? There are studies that show this. There are studies that show that the smaller classrooms, the smaller the ratio, of students per teacher.
That's the ideal. of
Right,
course.
And-
right, absolutely.
But
And our
it's not,
children,
it's not possible though. And I mean, as a parent, I could sit here and make an argument that is it fair to have lower classroom sizes at Skyler, but much larger classroom sizes elsewhere in the district? It's about trying to find out what works best. And,
Right.
and
And they're working on it. I mean, the equitable distribution, they are working
Right.
on it.
One sec. Mr. Tosh, can you give us a rough idea what our student population has been trending over the last 3 to 5 years?
I think last year we had about 400 to 500 more students in the district last.
Than the year before that, if you
I'll
recall?
be honest with you, with COVID, I can tell you, because it was all over.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. Yes, that is my concern. Is that I understand Skylar has lower classroom sizes and everybody does want lower classroom sizes for their children. Obviously, we all want that for our children. But, and I'm not saying that we deserve it more than those other families. That's not what I'm saying.
I know
But-
that. It's just a point that had to be made because there's probably a lot of people watching this meeting tonight from other buildings that this may be shedding new light on, saying, well, jeepers, if Skylar can have, low children to teacher ratios, why don't we in other buildings? And again, I'm new and I'm
But
telling
that
you,
is my point, though. If these schools already don't have that, and now we're taking our kids and sending them there. I mean, and you're already talking about moving computer rooms to make room for new classrooms, that being a possibility. But that's temporary. That's only a temporary solution. Aren't we ultimately pushing this further down the line by cramming more children into fewer schools?
I said temporary inconvenience, and what I meant by that was that the classroom sizes will temporarily increase across the board, but it's making sure that they're all equivalent in one way or another. And then as we, especially the newer people here, take a look at, enrollment and faculty compared to enrollment, ability to pay. We will do what's in the best interest of the kids and the teachers and the taxpayers. I promise you.
Okay, I just want to be clear, though, that again, this is temporary. You keep saying temporary increased class sizes, but there's no end to that temporary. You haven't said what the end is. Have you?
I have not, because again, I said we need to get a handle on what is a true operating budget for this district. I believe I mentioned even to the union president last week, it'd be wonderful to have a professional do an analysis of this district, also some type of feasibility study for us to see, what we truly need in terms of faculty to children, so we can make more informed decisions up here. But we have to start somewhere.
Right, but again, I feel like this is, again, just coming down to money, which it is. It's all coming down to money.
It's a work in process and
Right.
that's the best.
But again, you are agreeing with me that the class sizes are going to be exacerbated in these other schools. That the class sizes that are already larger than ours are going to be even larger. And that in the future, as the district's growing, because there were 400 to 500 new students last year in the Wyoming Valley West School District, that in the future, we may not be able to accommodate that many children into our elementary schools and ultimately need a new elementary school, which could cost us $25 million. And how hard is that going to be on the taxpayers? If that's another one of our concerns.
If I may. So Mr. Tosh is working on the plan with our administration. It's a fluid plan. I mean, we still don't have all those numbers. Yes, I agree with you. Our class sizes are going to increase. We just don't know how much right yet. But I feel that this board is very committed to our children and our staff, that if there's something that we need to do in year 2 or 3 to change this plan because it's not going in the best path or light, we will definitely do so. But at that point, we'll definitely have a better handle on our financial means, which is what Mr. Keating is referring to.
Okay, so then in 2 to 3 years, we could have the $25 million
didn't say that. I'm sorry. Please don't put words in my mouth. They definitely did not say those words.
Okay.
But if there's a different approach that we would need to look into, I feel as though this board that sits here in front of you is committed enough to do what's best for our staff and our students.
Okay, and I know you guys are all trying to balance this budget, but I'm just trying to state from my point of view, it seems as though we are trying, I mean, you said you're trying to get a hold on what the actual budget is, correct? What this school need, what the district needs to run on every year fiscally. You want to have people come in, get a real good hard number, correct? That's the starting point. But right now, we are going to close Skylar for $3 million. That's what we're gaining out of this deficit, correct?
I said that the reduction in staffing through attrition appears to equate to somewhere around $3 million based on what's in the budget here.
Okay, so then the negative 5.5, is that considered the deficit if we keep Skylar open?
The closure of the building because it's so old and
Cost to repair. Cost to
correct.
repair, right.
And what it will take to make that building sustainable. It makes more financial sense to displace the children and the faculty at this time into other areas of the district.
Thank you, I appreciate that, but that wasn't my question. My question was the $5.5 million that you stated we are in deficit. Does that deficit for next year, would that include the cost of keeping Skylar open? Was that calculated into that?
Yes, the keeping, it does not make, I mean, it does not make financial sense right now to keep that building open. Unless we're on different, I mean,
No, but that's all I was asking. So the negative 5.5 million is the deficit if we continue with all the schools open.
Next year would be 6.5.
And again,
Okay, so it would be 6.5 if
but
we
it's
kept
much,
Skylar open.
it's much more than just keeping all the schools open. What the driving cost behind any budget is personnel, it's staffing. And there were, I believe, 17, Dave?
Yeah.
The people that are retiring and other teachers are going to be placed into those positions instead of hiring new replacements and maintaining the same level of staffing. The savings is more than just the building.
Right, I understand that, and you've stated that several times. My question was simply, what is the deficit next year if Skylar is kept open? Is it it's 6.5?
6.5 plus 6.5 on our negative spending balance of a little over $1 million a year. So
Okay,
we're 5.5 this year. We're gonna be a little over 6.5 next year. But as barely stated in our PowerPoint, that the roof needs work, the boilers need work.
right. So
Excuse me, let me finish, please. We still need HVAC systems put in those buildings. So there's a numerous amount of work that we have to put into that building. So again, what Mr. Keating's referring to, that we can't just we can't go another year without putting money back into the school. So the initial $3-some million in savings plus the future spending habits, it has to balance that.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, no, I was just wondering what the deficit was, if the 5.5 this year was including what it would cost to keep Skylar open with the repairs necessary to keep it open. That was simply my question. That's all I was asking. And obviously you stated that the savings would snowball about $1 million a year.
Roughly.
Okay. Okay, and my last question is about special education. Where are you putting the special education on Skylar?
I would like to know that answer too.
Mrs. Barrett, our special ed supervisor, is here, and I asked her to brief the board and brief the public on it also.
Okay.
She's coming to your right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mari Barretta. I'm the Director of Special Education. Currently, this is a
Mari.
projected,
Could you just spell your last name for this?
sure, it's Baratta. So this is a projected proposal. Right now, we have one autistic support classroom at Skyler, one life skills support at Skyler, and then we have learning support at Skyler. They will be moved to Chester, the autistic support and the life skills support, which would mean that Miss Puglisi, who is the autistic support teacher, she will now move over to Chester, and the life skills placement will be absorbed into Mrs. Kuzma's classroom, which is life skills. The learning support will be dispersed according to boundaries, and that's still being ironed out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Barrera.
Thank you.
So before we have people speak for a second time, can we complete everyone who hasn't spoken yet? And mind you, there are also people on Zoom, so let's give them the opportunity as well. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken yet who would like to come forward and speak? Anthony, is there anyone on Zoom who is requesting the opportunity to speak? Ma'am, is that okay if we do them? Yeah.
Sarah Mccracken from Kingston. I have the pupil enrollment for all of the schools here. The learning support or life skills support at Chester has 8 students. Skylar has 10, so that would be 18 learning support or learning life skills. Thank you. Autistic support, Chester has 5 and Skylar has 9. So that would be 14. Those are big classes for that, for those kids. And I think someone said to me that Chester already had to separate their kids. So I don't know, somebody just mentioned that to me.
Can I defer that to Mrs. Barretta? Because that's a little different.
Maria, if you could come up to the microphone.
So the reconfiguration for Skylar to go to Chester for the autistic support classroom, we'll just start there. In compliance in state federal regulations, you have to have 8 students, supplemental or full-time, 12 itinerant. So in regards to reconfiguration, we always have to meet state and federal regulations. It's not accurate for life skills numbers next year. 6 of those 8 students, I believe that there's 8, I would have to confirm that, but 6 of those students are going into 6th grade. So that leaves 2 students in the life skills support classroom, and the incoming students, which I think is a projection because I haven't calculated and I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head. But right now the life skills classroom is roughly 10 to 12 students. They need supplemental life skills, which means you could have 20 in a classroom. That's a state and federal regulation that we have to abide by. Autistic support, again, is reconfigured. We have 5 autistic support classrooms, and currently we have incoming EI students. So at this time, we are sitting down as a team and we're dispersing all those students to meet, again, state and federal regulations and ensuring that we meet all their programming, their services. And yes, you know, the building is closing, but our number 1 goal is, again, to ensure that it's an individualized plan. Their program, their services will be 100% sound because it is by law. Thank you.
Anthony, could you please put through the individual on Zoom who would like to speak now?
Jessica Moira, you're permitted to speak. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Anthony, is it possible to unmute her?
I tried, it just prompts them to, that we're asking them to speak, so they have to accept that we're on mute.
Okay. So then before going to Zoom, is there anyone else in the public?
My name is Katie Connolly, and I am from Kingston. I have one child in Third Ave and one in Skyler. So my question is, what are you doing with Third Ave? Because if Skyler closes, that is their kindergarten, correct? So I have another one that will be going to kindergarten.
Katie, we actually over the last 4 or 5 days have been working on kindergarten. And honestly, I'd rather not get into it right now because it's fluid, but we're looking at a lot of different aspects of it. But as far as giving you something definitive, I can't do that right now. But you and I have spoke on numerous occasions, and as soon as I get that, I will get that to you.
Oh,
And we'll, to all the parents.
kids at different schools is hard,
Right,
you
I get it.
know, and
And
it's,
we've always tried to be as cooperative with parents that get in that dilemma, and we'll continue to do that.
yeah, and you've been great. Besides that, I also have a daughter at Skyler who we'll find out where she's going, but, she has an IEP. So will she get the same services at the new school? Because we've had a problem at Skyler this year getting her services. She went about 2.5 months without an IEP with nobody telling me.
Her services will not change.
Okay,
And I would encourage you, as you've done in the past with me, we've had some good
I'm
conversations.
okay, I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate the call. And please get a hold of me. As you can see, Mrs. Barata, I'm partial and biased, but if there's a better special ed director in the area, I haven't seen it. But if you speak to myself or Mrs. Barata, we will get that. Any issues you have taken care of, but your child's IEP will not change.
Okay, and then my last question is, so class sizes obviously is a huge thing. And when there are no substitutes, obviously they go into other classrooms. Now we found out this year, I know my daughter sometimes will go to 2nd grade and she's in first. Is that gonna happen when you combine? Because it's gotta be hard for teachers. to teach
Katie,
two
honestly,
different
I wish I had a crystal ball with substitute teachers. I think that's gonna be, it's a dilemma all education is facing. It's not something that I think you talk to any teacher sitting there tonight.
Oh, I feel for them.
In any building, it's a very, very difficult situation, and we try and distribute them as best we can. But every school district in the area is dealing with it, and we try to do our best with it. And I wish I had there's sometimes I wish I had a better answer for it, but with the lack of kids coming out of high school and going into education, it makes it certainly a major challenge. We've had some teachers this year, and I don't want to say it too loud because our union president's over here, but at times we've had teachers go above and beyond on their prep periods and helping out. And, that's something that I can't thank the teachers enough for. But it is a difficult situation, and all I can tell you is we will do the best we can with it.
Okay, now last question, when and if my child gets transferred to St. Dana, if one of her teachers, are there still chances to request a teacher? Or are we already cut off at that point? Because I've requested their teachers for next year before I found out.
I always tell parents, talk to the building principal.
Okay. Which
Okay.
would be Mr. Primo, correct? Okay. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony, could you tell me, did that person come back on?
Jessica Marira, you could speak.
Hi, my name is Jessica Marrera and I'm from Swarsville. I have a daughter currently in the high school. She's in 9th grade. But my daughter attended Dana from 2012 to 2017. And at that time, Dana was in disrepair from mold in the gym, no air or HVAC throughout the building, no playground, just cracked asphalt for the kids to play on. Meanwhile, admin area has air conditioning and budgets promising of making schools up to date and safer and never follow through. How are these issues in the other schools going to be fixed before getting hundreds of kids placed in the schools for Skylar Ave to close?
As the chair for buildings and grounds, we can't solve all those problems, but most of the roof at Dana is being looked into. The HVAC system at the whole building for HVAC at Dana is being looked into, and also Third Ave at this moment, and the touch on Chester as well.
Why weren't those issues resolved years ago? Why is it now a big deal because Skylar Ave is closing?
So
Why did our kids have to go through heat in the summer, no HVAC? The grounds outside being played on. I've been coming to these board meetings for years now and no issues have been solved. However, the admin area, air conditioning, nurses, air conditioning. Why have our kids been put on the back burner for so long? And now everything's coming out because Skylar Ave is closing and new kids need to be placed in these school districts or these schools within the district.
So I cannot answer for past boards. I won't, I can't, and I won't. But I can answer for this board and my committee that we are looking into it. There is COVID money, the ESSER 3 that's available to allow the funding to go forward.
Okay. Mr. Tosh, I have a question for you. You say your number one priority is the health and safety and well-being for our kids. Where was this concern a few months ago or beginning of the school year or even years ago? Please explain to the parents of this district and to Skylar why we should send our children to school tomorrow in the condition that's so detrimental and unsafe for the kids to be in.
Well, I think, as I said before, I think as time goes on, you have a 102-year-old building that constantly is needing updated repairs. And I think over time, as we were saying, I know the request was made, let's have another year. You go to year 103, 104. What we're saying is right now, again, I don't know from the standpoint of why things weren't done necessarily to that building in the past, but I know from my standpoint as the superintendent, I'm just not comfortable saying that for next school year, that's a building that should be open.
I understand your concern now, Mr. Tosh, but in your slide in the beginning of this meeting, you were so adamant on the disrepair and the non-compliance of the Skylar Ave that the kids should not be in. So why should they be in there tomorrow?
Well, what I'm saying is the condition of the building continues to deteriorate.
It's already gone, Mr. Tosh.
Get a decision on it. And with where we're at in the school year, my recommendation is to complete the rest of the school year And then, as I said before, moving forward, I just don't think you can physically, and as Mr. Keating had said, and Mr. Rivera had said, you can continually put large amounts of money into a building that's 102 years old. A lot of our buildings need work, but compared to Skylar, Dana's in a better situation physically. But again, I just don't think you can continue day after day after day, starting in September, to put the kids back in the building.
I understand that. My child doesn't even go to Skylar and I'm fighting for these kids right now. However,
Hoping we're going to get
this,
through the next 2 weeks, and then, moving forward, I hope it's a better situation.
I understand. My child doesn't go to Skylar. She never did, but I'm fighting for these kids because I understand the frustration of these parents. And it's awful that this district has become to what it is now. And for these kids to be placed in other schools within the district, bigger class sizes is going to affect them. I work with emotional and autistic support and IEPs and 504 plans, and those kids need small classrooms. And that needs to be promised to those parents, that these kids are going to get the best education that Wyoming Valley West once was afforded to these kids. Because the falling apart of the district for years now, this should never be going on. This shouldn't be our parents, the teachers, the kids' problem with the budget and the closing of the schools. All these issues should have been handled years ago. You have been in this position or in this school district for 20 to 25 years. Why haven't you put your foot down? Lastly, as said before by another parent, the findings by the Auditor General that were not followed through, but just swept under the rug, the ones who were on the board, including Superintendent Mr. Tosh, will be held accountable in the court of law. The repairs to these schools all need to be fixed before the shutdown of Skylar Ave. And I think all the parents at Skylar Ave need to have a petition and have everybody sign that to make sure the kids are safe in the other schools within the district before they send their children there. Or I think Wyoming Valley West should pay the bill for these kids to go to another district to get a better education. And that's all I have.
Anthony, is there anyone else on Zoom?
No, she was the only one.
Is there anyone else in the audience here now? Mr. Savage, would you like to open it up to board members?
Yes, please. Any board members? Let's start with Mr. Hardwick.
I guess, yeah, two questions, 2 points, something, I don't know. I'm gonna ask for Heather, Savannah, Sarah, Jason, Dawn, Jennifer, the last lady, on and on and on. Perhaps I'm out of line, but I'm gonna ask anyway. I understand the deadlines for dates for the 23rd of August, but why can't we have a plan for where the children will go and disseminate that prior to the 23rd, like much faster?
Prior to the 23rd of August?
Yes.
They'll have that. They'll have that.
So when will we have that plan by?
I would hope, we talked about this today, I would hope to mid to late June that this would all be taken care of in terms of where they're going. That still gives them 8-9 weeks after.
Well, that's the question I'm asking. If I want to know that this will be available to the public and to the parents.
As soon as we get it, we'll have it on the website to you. It'll be roboed to tell you to see, and we've even talked about a mailing with it. But listen, we want to get this as quick as we can to parents. And as I said, we meet every day with it. We're tweaking it. There are some variables with it, especially on a kindergarten level, because we haven't even had, we're still getting the kindergarten registration, but rest assured, this is something that we will get to you as soon as possible.
So I would just make a commitment then to the folks listening in on Zoom or the computer, the folks sitting here, the teachers, administration. I, and I'm sure several other board members, will make sure to stay on top of this as soon as the information's available, that it be put out and that people find out where their kids would go to if the school closes down. I know that in all my notes, it's been a very common question and a desire, and I don't see any reason why we can't have that before August 23rd. Even if it means the board will pitch in and help, then we'll pitch in and help, but there's got to be a way to come up with this information for you folks. If we're going to make decisions like this, then we need to back up this, I don't want to say the simple information. We should be able to back it up with the information that goes along with it. So,
Mr. Harvey, let me just say this. And again, with the amount of time our administration is putting in, our goal is if we could get you that information before your children leave at the end of the year, we will do it. I hesitate because there's a lot of moving parts with it. And our last piece of the puzzle with this is looking at tweaking maybe some boundaries. And the reason we're looking at tweaking the boundaries is, again, the equitable distribution. But in a perfect world, I'd love to be able to sit here and tell you before your children leave for the summer, they will know where they're going. I think we have a good idea where the majority of them are going, but I don't want to sit here and put a date on it and be maybe a week late. But rest assured, the goal is to get this all out. First of all, if we can before the year's over, if not mid to late June, but it will get done before that.
and I just follow up by saying, I do not back down on this. I will continue with it. Holding Mr. Tosh and the admin, which this is business, folks. From my perspective, these are things that need to be done. We need to hold, our job isn't to run the district. Our job is to make sure the district is run well. We're going, as much as I can participate in that, we're going to do that going forward. And if it means just asking extra questions, if it means trying to push on deadlines, then we're going to need to do that. But we need to do it the best we can. Bottom line is for the kids. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Savage, may I just add something? David, I understand you could tell where the children are going, what school and all, but how would you know the numbers until you get registration?
Well, we're basing a lot on the numbers from last year. Kindergarten's the tricky. But as far as the numbers are right now, for the most part, you're looking at the kids that are currently with us. So we're confident with those numbers. Obviously, you'll get some children that'll move in, but for the most part, the regular first through fifth, those numbers will be pretty consistent and we'll be all right there. The kindergarten's the tricky one right now, only because we don't have a lot of that information. We get it as some more as the registrations come in the summer. If you notice, we tried making a robocall and we put it on the website earlier than we ever do, encouraging parents to register their children for kindergarten. The quicker they do that, the better it is for us in terms of our data.
Kindergarten's
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, there's one more thing I do want to make note to. If everyone, for everyone who paid attention earlier in the year, even in the fall of last year, when the new board came in, or when the board was assembled and reorganized after December 1st, the meeting, several of us put forth and a resolution was passed to have the Auditor General come in and conduct an audit. There were changes in the state where evidently the Auditor General, they don't do routine 5-year audits anymore. I still am maintaining and trying to push, as several others are, that the Auditor General comes in and assists us with an audit, because I believe that you can't make all the repairs going forward if you don't have some idea of how you've got to the point you're in. And we need some help from the Auditor General's office to do that, or an outside source, but the auditors generals should be at no cost to the district. Therefore, they should come in and help us. So I'm going to continue to try to work toward that means where the audit that should have been done from 2018 for a 5-year period gets done and processed, and we share the results as well as learn from them ourselves. Now I promise I'm done.
Mr. Keynes.
I have
Any
nothing.
questions?
No, I'm good.
I just hope you have faith in the new board. We're trying to do the best we can for students, parents, teachers, taxpayers, ourselves, everyone included. Just have faith and we're moving forward in a better direction.
I just like to finalize one thing before we're done tonight. I do want to say to the parents and the teachers out there that I started this night by saying, I would hope we could have civil, rational discourse and talk about this. And I compliment you. I think you were a great example tonight of how coming up and speaking and hearing your voice and doing it in a civil, rational manner. I think it was a great example for the students as well as other parents. So I commend all the parents that came up here and spoke tonight.
I would say thank you.
Mr. Caputo.
I just would like to thank you all for coming. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to sit here and listen to all of you. I can guarantee you that what we do or what we will do will be in the best interest of all of the students, parents, and taxpayers. Thank you.
Mr. Keating.
Thanks, Mr. Savage. Basically echo what my peers have said this evening. We care very much about all of you, the kids, the faculty, the people that make up this district. And I would rather be straight and maybe have someone get mad at my answer, but more importantly, my honest answer. I vow to be honest and transparent as long as I'm on this school board, and I promise to work for all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Marjorie.
I think I said enough tonight. Thank you, David.
You bet.
So before you conclude the meeting, can I just so for the stenographer, I'm going to be giving you a copy of the agenda and a copy of the financial or chronological financial overview prepared by Mr. Keating that was distributed to the public. Please attach them to the record.
That being said, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. Thank you.
So the public hearing section has now concluded. There'll be a short recess. Anyone who needs to use the restroom, please do. And then there will be a special meeting following.
For those of you who stayed. This is a special meeting for general purposes. Call to order. Mrs. Wood and roll call, please.
Mrs. Basat? Here. Mr. Damascus? Mr. Hardwick?
Here.
Mr. Camus?
Here.
Mr. Keating?
Here.
Mr. Majer?
Here.
Mr. Perfetto?
Here.
Mr. Pazinski? Mr. Savage?
Here. Would you please stand for a moment of silence followed by the salute to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Seems like we did this part before, but are there any interested statements or concerns? Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
There's plenty of.
And on behalf of the Wyoming Valley West School Board, we have the book that you've picked. Want to read the title for us?
The Brothers Karamazov.
Double dare you to repeat that. Not him. Ben, do you want to read what you have for us?
And this is just continuing the tradition of the senior liaison for the school board to donate a book to the high school library. And so I have chosen to donate my personal copy of The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. The Brothers Karamazov is one of the most noteworthy novels in literature, full to the brim with moral, philosophical, and ethical issues that expand the self-awareness of the reader. Specifically, the dialogue between the Grand Inquisitor and Christ is one of my favorite passages in the novel and of all books that I've read. Hopefully, years from now, a Spartan student will pick up this copy and have their worldview rocked and fall in love with the greatest classic in the literary canon. I'm honored to donate this book, and thank you to the school board for allowing such a beautiful Wyoming Valley West tradition to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. So much further.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay, statements from interested citizens. Citizens addressing the board are asked to state their name and town of residence in accordance with the board's policy 903. There's a copy available. Statements are limited to 3 minutes. General recommended action.
All right, just a couple quick things. The student that came up with that Dostoevsky novel, I just want to encourage him to read Crime and Punishment. That's another great book by Dostoevsky. But tonight, I understand that you have a couple resolutions that you're going to cover tonight. So I just wanted to ask the proposed final budget for 2022-2023. Tonight, this is a preliminary budget, correct? Correct. And do you have an idea when the final budget would be available to the public?
I believe solicitor, and we have 20 days. This budget we have to post this for 20 days before we can act on the next reading of the budget.
Yes, so today will be the preliminary. It'll be then printed and put out at the administration building as well as, I'm assuming, are we putting it on the website?
Yes.
Put on the website for viewing, and then there's a 20-day waiting period before the district, before the board can then vote on a final budget. So you're probably looking towards the end of June before a final budget is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else? To continue. Under general recommended action, there are 2 items. First, A, thank you. A is adopt proposed final budget for 2022, 2023 in the amount of $85,168,492. And number 2, authorize the administration to conditionally proceed with its plan regarding Skyler Avenue School pending the board's final approval at a later date. Can I have a motion, please? Second,
Second.
thank you. Mrs. Wood, would you take?
Just for clarity purposes, are you going to vote them separately?
We'll vote them all together. Is there any objection to voting? them all
We
together?
vote them separate, please.
Certainly, okay.
You want to start with
Yep.
item one. And then probably just to make it clean, you should do a motion and second for item one first.
Okay. All right, let's start all over. Then we're doing item 1, which is adopt proposed final budget for 2022, 2023 in the amount of $85,168,492. I need a motion.
So move.
Second. Okay. Now, Mrs. Wood, would you?
Mrs. Cassatt?
Yes.
Mr. Hardwick?
Yes.
Mr. Kamis?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Majer?
The fact that I received this at about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, I really haven't had time to question some of the items on it. So with that, I'll vote no.
Mr. Perfetto?
Yes.
Mr. Savage?
Yes. Item number 2, authorize the administration to conditionally proceed with its plan regarding Skyler Avenue School, pending the board's final approval at a later time. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mrs. Wood?
Mrs. Cassatt?
Yes.
Mr. Hardwick?
Yes.
Mr. Kamis?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Majer?
Yes.
Mr. Perfetto?
Yes.
Mr. Pazinski? Mr. Savage?
Yes. Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.